Welcome back to another edition of the podcast and a happy new year to you all. Of course, tonight is our game week 25, 26 actually. That's not a very good start to the year. Our game week 26 National League preview and predictions. Of course, as always, it's 2025. I'm still here, joined by my co-host. I think since 2023 was when we first started doing this together, Paul. But happy new year to you, Paul, and how are you doing?
Yeah, happy new year, Luke. Very good, very good. Thanks for asking. Bit cold down here, down south. I know you've probably got a bit more snow and frost than we have, but yeah, not too bad going into the new year. I've not had much football to watch, to be honest, with Wealdstone, but apart from that, it's all right.
Yeah, Halifax have kind of been the same, and I don't think it's going to get any better in terms of home games either. We know what that's like. But there is some positive news to bring about Halifax tonight off the field, which I'll be totally honest is pretty rare with Halifax in terms of facilities. But we will get onto that later. Any New Year's resolutions for you then, Paul?
No, I haven't really thought about it too much, to be honest. I'm just hoping that, come May time that we'll still be able to talk about National League next year, Luke. I think that's, I'm maybe hoping that Wealdstone buy some players in this or loan some players in this January transfer window. But no, not any personal New Year's resolutions. I'm not very good at keeping them, if I'm honest.
No, I'm not either, to be honest. Last year, I think it was 2024, I said, right, what I'm going to start doing now is going to the gym 3 times a week because I play football. Obviously, as you get older, particularly when you're like my height as well, you kind of need to keep up with going to the gym and stuff to be able to compete. Anyway, I keep stop. I don't even go now, to be honest. I go once in a blue moon. So I'm not bothering this year, to be honest. I'm just going to see how it goes. And hopefully I end up going to the gym on a regular basis. But no, in terms of the football side of things, there isn't particularly too many games to actually talk about. Of course, Halifax as well. Their game got called off on New Year's Day. We haven't played since. So we haven't actually even played in 2025 yet either. So, of course, I think that's the same for a few clubs. Filed to another club where they've not played either. But something I do want to talk about tonight is a bit about the relegation battle. Of course, Wealdstone at the moment. I don't know if you saw, Paul, but me and a few of the National League experts, you may say, recorded a podcast the other night. A lot of talk about Alex Reid. And obviously him returning to Oldham now. We've talked about his next club. We haven't actually talked about the effect that it's going to have on Wealdstone. Of course, he's returned now. Are you a little concerned, of course, in his final game, losing to Maidenhead and now him being recalled? He's starting to feel a little bit nervy again, isn't it? Now you've had that defeat after such a good run of form. And
yeah. It's they didn't play particularly well, if I'm brutally honest. I did go to the game, and it always felt like Maidenhead were always first to the ball and wanted to win the game more. They were very attritional. They fully deserved their win. No two ways about it. They outfought, outran, outbattled Wealdstone. Both teams didn't play any particularly good football. I know the conditions weren't brilliant. Pitch is a bit heavy, etc. But there was no excuses. I mean, Alex Reid scored an excellent goal, and it would have been nice for him to sort of leave on a winning note. But we didn't play New Year's Day, so we haven't played since Boxing Day, and now we've lost him back to Oldham. And there is a real concern there, Luke, because he made a massive influence in that short space of time he was with us. And, I think the challenge that we've got now is trying to find someone who's willing to come and put a shift in for the club like he did with the quality he obviously has. Yeah, it's an interesting one. We've lost Henry Sandat as well, who's another centre forward on loan from Hull City. He's gone on a permanent deal to Sutton today. So we've lost 2 centre forwards. We've got Shauna Darkware on a long-term injury where there's no real return. Could be February, could be March. So in the short term, we're looking at Sam Ashford, who was injured on Boxing Day. Hopefully he'll return. He's had 2 weeks to recover. And then we've got no real centre-forward option. So Michael Obriero may play up top. Max Kretschmar could play further forward. We've had a lad called Callum McFarlane on loan from Fulham who's been injured for quite a long time, and there's no return for him. So, yeah, we're struggling for numbers down at the Vale. Craig Eastman's got sent off on Boxing Day, so he's got a 3-match suspension. And we've had Jack Wells-Morrison return to Crystal Palace. So, listen, we've been absolutely decimated. Injuries, hopefully some will come back, but not too many. So, I know they're working hard to get players in. That's what you hear a lot about clubs. We're working hard to get players in. We've got to get quality, etc. But we really do need some numbers in, because otherwise, January and February, especially until some of these long-term injuries come, we are going to be really under the cosh.
Yeah, you've got some particularly tough fixtures as well coming up when I look at Wealdstone. I think 4 of the next 7 games, aren't they, away from home as well? And those home games have seemed really tricky as well. You know, some of those, I believe, Hartlepool's coming up. You know, they're bang on form, not very good time to be playing them either. And I'm sure there's a few others as well in there who are tricky games, and away from home as well for you guys. But of course, Alex Reid returning now. I think when I look at Wealdstone and the recruitment in the summer, it felt like, in a way, and I do feel Wealdstone knew what they were doing, but I think this season they've gone for more quantity over quality. They didn't go with the idea of signing 5 or 6 key standout players. They've gone with the idea of having more squad depth. And of course, that's something you've got to kind of consider when you're part-time, isn't it? Because you know you're going to have injuries more. So for me, overall, when you look at the moment, throughout the season, Alex Reid came on loan. That felt like a quality striker that you needed, under signing as well. And other players seem to improve since he's come in. Of course, you've had that defeat now to a fellow relegation rival. Something I'm going to ask you, when you look down towards the bottom at the moment, at all those clubs down there, do you think this season is particularly quite weak down there with some of the teams and the quality in the sides?
It appears so, doesn't it? I mean, you've only got to look at, and we've talked about a lot, Ebbsfleet's record, 9 points off 25 games, 1 win. We haven't seen the like of that, for many a season in the National League. Boston have only won 3. Wealdstone have only won 5 along with Aldershot. So there is some poor records, I guess, is the best way of putting it. Wouldn't necessarily say they're weak teams. It's like we've always said, that the league seems to get a little bit stronger through more teams every season.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's more teams wanting to spend more money. There's more players wanting to play at the top in the National League. There's the full-time teams are always going to have a little bit of advantage of being able to recruit over the likes of Maidenhead and Wealdstone, or even the likes of Ebbsfleet or Boston, as an example. So the problem you've got is if you're a Wealdstone or one of those promoted sides, say Oxford City last year, and it didn't happen for them, is trying to consolidate and slowly incrementally build. But as you incrementally build, you've got to make sure that you don't stand still. Because if you stand still, you're almost going to probably go backwards, because all the other clubs are keeping up with each other to a point. It's a bit disappointing from my fact when you look at Wealdstone. They've invested more money than they've ever invested in the squad. They've invested more time and resource into it. There's full-time management in there. Some players are on a hybrid model, not necessarily a full-time model. And you look at going into January, Altrincham on Saturday, if it's played, which is unlikely. You go into the Altrincham game mid-January and you look, we've probably got 11, 12 players that can be named in the squad that you would have in the National League. So it's really, really disappointing, really frustrating. And that's not, not knocking Matt Taylor or the board of directors. It's just how it is. And I think you talk about their recruitment early on, Luke. They did go for quantity over quality. Now, I don't know whether there was an element of, have they panicked a little bit and signed some players to then know that better players have come along and they pick them up as well? Because if you look at it, I think we've got 5 players out on loan that we signed at the beginning of the season or the back end of last season, or we've retained from last season that probably weren't in the squad or in the team often. So, to have 5, 6 players out on loan is quite unusual for a club like Wealdstone, because they don't have the numbers normally, and that just probably sort of gives you an idea of maybe the quality that they have recruited. So it's a really difficult one, and Wealdstone fans are very realistic. It's going to be a bum fight down there. I think that we're probably just about strong enough to stay up, but the next month or so is really going to be testing, because we've got to wait for players to come in.
I agree with certain points that you made there. I agree with the point that I think the further up the division you go, the stronger it's got over the last couple of seasons. I think there's more depth to the division and how strong it is. For example, you look at some of those mid-table teams. A few years ago, you'd be saying they'd be probably top 5 with some of the actual squads if you look at them. What I disagree with is actually how weak it is at the bottom compared to the previous year. Now, if Boreham Wood, last season's Boreham Wood side, were in this division, I think they would comfortably be staying up at the moment. I think there's about 6 teams worse than them, than what there was last season. And I think there's a few other teams in there as well. Even the likes of Dorking, I think they would be out of that drop zone compared to some of the teams last year, because you look at Ebbsfleet, for example, they're probably the worst, and we keep repeating it, and I know it's very negative, but they're probably the worst National League side that I think we can both agree we've seen in a very, very long time. I'd probably put them on par with Dover, and they already had a points deduction and a very thin squad. I know that's very harsh, but genuinely, you look, they've only had 1 win and 6 draws. They've got 9 points over halfway through the season. It's not looking good for them. You've got Boston, for me personally, who I think, although they've just got promoted, there weren't that many high expectations for them. I did expect a little bit more from them. And it's looking like those 2 are down now, if I'm being honest. You've then got the 2 above them. You've got Braintree and Maidenhead. If this squad, Maidenhead, were playing how they are doing at the moment with this current squad, last season they would be down, I think, now, as in the thick of it, where it'd be really difficult for them to get out of it now. Because you look at the amount of goals they've conceded. Maidenhead have always been very well known to be good defensively, and that's what's kept them up, being able to grind results out against the better teams. They're not doing that this season. They've lost to Forest Green, they've lost to Oldham, they've lost to York, all quite heavily. And they're also conceding a lot of goals. They've conceded 49 goals so far. They're on track to concede over 90 goals, and that's unheard of in this Maidenhead side. They're not particularly scoring too many either when you look at them. For me, if you put this current Maidenhead side now in the previous year, I think they're being severe danger, and I think they are this season. But just coming on to Maidenhead at the moment, you look at them and you look at the teams around them. You look at the financial backing that they had in the summer with the 4 million coming in from, I think Kilman, wasn't it, who went on to Wolves, and there was a sell-on clause in there. But you look at that 4 million. What I find quite... I think frustrating when I look in at Maidenhead at the moment, what I find quite frustrating is the fact that they've got 4 million there. Yes, they're wanting to put it towards a stadium, but I feel it's crucial that they actually invest in the current squad, because I look at that current squad, right, and I look at the teams around them, and I think genuinely if they invest in the squad, sign a few more players, they could climb well away from that drop zone, because the rest of the sides are just so weak. The bottom 5 at the moment, or you could potentially, I wouldn't include Wealdstone because they've improved in recent weeks overall, but you look at that current bottom 5, it's projected to stay up this season. You need early 40 points. I think it was 41 points you're going to need to be able to survive. That the last time a side could stay up with early 40 points, I think it was 42 points the last time, was the 2011-12 season. Now that's over a decade ago. I was 5 years old at that time. So for me, overall, you look at that and you look at the quality, particularly in that bottom 5, potentially 6, you'd have to say it's really weak. And if you're looking at a Maidenhead at the moment, you have to think we need to recruit here, because even if Maidenhead do stay up this season, or even one of those 5 stay up, for me personally, the side that do stay up will be going down next season, because you look at the sides that are coming up, that are going to be coming up next year, going to be a lot stronger than towards the bottom. I'll just get my charger, so it's just there.
Right, it's. I don't think you're too far wrong, Luke. I think you're right. You know, the bottom teams are potentially weaker than we've seen a long time in this league, because I think the rest of the league are almost sort of, I guess you can look at it and say that they're picking up the players that may well have normally played in that bottom 5, and that they're going further up the chain, and there's more players to choose from, and budgets and salaries get made bigger, and it's a real tough one, because it is a tough league. And I think maybe what's occurred this season, Luke, and I know we've spoken about it before, is because you haven't got the big teams that we talk about, the Wrexhams, Notts Counties, Chesterfields, Stockports. More teams that have looked at it and gone, this is a great chance to get out of this league. Let's put a bit of money to it potentially. Let's go for it. And you've only got to see what York have done, buying Josh Stones off of Wigan, almost snatched them out of the hands of Oldham, and Oldham have now going to have to go and find a centre forward. They've had to call Alex Reid back, and he came on as a sub in the week. Barnet have gone and signed Leon Love, who are off Boreham Wood, Boreham Wood are top of the National League South, and he sort of proved himself a little bit in the National League. So these teams are strengthening all the time and looking to see where they can tweak to get better, whereas the bottom clubs are having to sort of feed on the scraps and see what deals are out there.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. And just finally on Wealdstone, then, do you feel even if Wealdstone survive this season, are you a little bit more concerned about I know every season when you look at Wealdstone, it is about just surviving, but do you feel a little bit more concerned long term now when you look at some of the sides coming up and how Wealdstone have done so far this season, that potentially in the future you're going to be heading towards the National League South again?
Do you know what? I'd be more concerned that if they got relegated, how they do in the National League South, than if they stayed up and did in the National League next year, because I think there's things in place off the field in relation to the new ground. I know you're still talking some couple of years off, but the investment involved in that, talking to investors. Matt Taylor stays, gets a pre-season under his belt again. All these little things will just bed in a bit more, and there's always hope that fifth from bottom upwards is where they'll finish. I do fear more for them if they drop, that they'll ever come back up, rather than actually if they stay in it, will they get relegated next season? I know that might not make sense, but I think because we're in it and we know what it takes, then I think we'd be okay. But it's getting harder every year, and that that the gap to getting dropped out of it is getting closer.
It's quite a repetitive question, so you're probably getting bored of it now. But I feel it's a good time to ask you once again, how many sides do you feel are involved in this relegation battle at the moment? I can get the table as well, because that'll probably look a bit better.
I suppose from Aldershot down, really, if you look at it, I mean, the advantage Wealdstone we've got 2 games in hand. If you can pick up 4 points out of that, that's if you put them into play, then all of a sudden you're up a couple of 2 or 3 places in the league. Aldershot aren't on a great run of form. Braintree haven't shown anything. Maidenhead haven't shown it. Fylde, again, none of them are showing any sort of form to think we can get out of this. I think Woking are the ones that will, and I think Tamworth, if they feed off the back of their FA Cup exploits, will that affect them negatively or positively? But yeah, genuinely, I think if you look at Aldershot down, Dagenham are getting a new manager coming in, so I think they'll get a bit of a bounce. They got 1-1 draw with Forest Green last night, which is a great result for them, off the back of losing the manager. So yeah, I think if you're thinking 18 down are the teams that are in there. With I think you're right, Ebbsfleet and Boston have got an absolute miracle to get out, whereas Fylde and Maidenhead and up have still got a chance of being in those 20-odd point brackets.
It is probably technically doable for Boston. The issue with Boston is the fact that the current squad's not good enough, and I don't feel like they're the type of club that are going to go out there and recruit quality players that are going to be able to keep them up from this point. Fylde, they're probably the side that I've been the most disappointed with. When you look at that bottom 6 at the moment, you would probably expect, I reckon, at least 5 of them to be in that position that they're in at the moment. As for Fylde, you thought first season, they've managed to survive. They've done their job this year, just survive, which they did do. They've got a good set of individuals in that squad, the likes of Eustace Bassi, the likes of Nick Horton. Now we're recruited in the summer. Hopefully we can start climbing towards where we want him to be, and that is to be towards the playoffs eventually. But that's just not been the case. They're right in the thick of it at the moment. They're another side for me that, even if they do survive this season, I just don't understand how they can progress, because in the summer I thought they would, and they simply haven't so far. But for the rest of them, Maidenhead, they're always going to be down there. Did I expect them to be doing as poor as they are doing in terms of points? Perhaps, potentially, I could have seen it coming because of the amount of defenders that left in the summer. Sam Beckwith was a significant loss for them. They lost a couple of other players as well. So I'm not too surprised that they're struggling. Of course, they can still survive in terms of points. They're certainly struggling at the moment. Aldershot, they're an interesting one. 3 draws in the last 3 games. If you look at those draws, they're actually quite solid points. Away at Sutton, equalised at last minute. Draw against Woking, who have under Neil Ardley have got 7 points from a possible of 9. And then, of course, a draw against Forest Green as well. You look at those and you probably say they're quite 3 respectable draws. But when you look at their form overall, you look at the previous games, they need to start picking wins up instead of draws to be able to climb further away from the drop zone. For me personally, if I'm on about the amount of sides that I feel are involved, I would probably say it's from Wealdstone down. I do feel Aldershot in recent weeks, and in terms of actually the quality in the squad, I think they're quite a lot above the sides below them. In terms of working, I think we can both agree that they're climbing further and further away under Neil Ardley, Ini Young coming in. Tamworth, they're a club, you never know of the FA Cup, the effect that's going to have on them. I think they're going to have a lot of games in hand, aren't they, themselves, in the next couple of months or so with cup competitions. But their home form, for me, I think will keep them away from being in a relegation battle. So for me, I personally feel it's going to be between those 5 clubs. But it does feel like if one of those could invest and go on a bit of a run, it could then drop down to 5. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, because of the league how it is, Luke, you've only got to get a run of games one way or the other, and you get sucked in, or you're pushed up the table. And we've talked about that at the back end at the top end in the playoffs. You see Sutton at 13th, then they're in 7th. Now they're back in 13th. Eastleigh were up there, they've dropped down. They've had a good. They've not lost in 5. All of a sudden they're back to 11th. So they need to turn some of them draws to wins, so it'd be okay.
Brilliant. Right, we'll have a look at the live chat then. Of course, I know a few people have come in. We're over 20 minutes and we haven't looked yet, so I do apologise. But Yorkie, the line said, evening all, excited to talk all things National League. Good to have you here, Yorkie. And then we've also had, don't know how to really pronounce, TGL234 said, Oldham are falling apart, unfortunately. Injuries and players gone, linked away, huge Jan needed. I think that's a little bit harsh to say they're falling apart. Losing to Hartlepool. Hartlepool, of course, haven't actually lost at home since their manager came in. So I wasn't too shocked with that. And I think Oldham were due a defeat. And then, of course, dropping points at Eastleigh, coming from behind, I believe, twice. For me, I think on a Tuesday night, that's not a horrendous point. Of course, losing Stones. I think it's a big loss because he clearly fitted Oldham's system. But I would back Oldham to be able to go out and find a replacement, a good replacement as well. They've clearly got the funds to do that. But good to hear what Oldham's fans overall are on that, because I've seen a few on Twitter. A few people have actually said, I wish him well. You can't really blame him. He's going to choose the money. York are in a better position as well. Paul has left us for the time being. I'm sure he'll be back shortly. But we've also had Christopher who's coming, who's a Gateshead fan, and said, evening, gents. Happy New Year to the pair of you. Disappointed to see Gateshead's trophy defence end so early on. No excuses for the playoffs. Now, yep, Gateshead, another side, lost a number of players, haven't they, not in the summer, during the season, actually. Oseni's left and Whelan, and I think Oseni particularly, we saw that against York, the amount of missed chances. If he was there, potentially they could have got an equaliser. Mr. Luke's in. Before he does that, are you okay, Paul?
Yeah, my battery, the laptop went down. Hang on. Still not plugged in. Bear with me.
I'll read his comment out anyway. Evening there now. Happy New Year to you lot there. Hope you are coming to our game on Tuesday night, Luke. Don't disappoint on losing players, but we'll bounce back from it. No pressure, lads. Good to see you here, Mr. Luke, once again, and Happy New Year to you, of course. And potentially, I might be there on Tuesday night. We'll have to wait and see. And then we've also had the Blue Newsroom podcasters in and said, hi, guys, how are we? We're both good. Happy New Year to you. Of course, a Southend fan. Don't know if I'm going on Saturday yet or not. Matthew Kirk is in. I don't know what he meant to put there. He's here. He's let us know that. Caroline is in with the Aldershot badge. Feel we will be safe. And then someone said Southend can get the playoffs. Yes, I was actually speaking to Justin Rees about the game coming up, and he actually made a good point, is the fact that Southend need to average 2 points per game at the moment to get the playoffs. For me personally, I think that's doable. Do I think they'll do it? For me, I don't think they will. Paul, do you think they could?
It's a tough one. They've just lost their. Is it Peppel?
Yeah,
Bim Peppel from Luton. I think he's going to go up to Chesterfield from what I read. So, and I think they've lost the goalkeeper as well. So, as much as these National League teams are able to loan players in, it's a real tough one when the likes of Wealdstone, Gateshead, and Southend. So, you've only got to look at those three clubs as examples of lost players that have been influential in their performances this season. How you then replace them quickly enough so it doesn't affect it too much. So, I think 2 points a game. If you go on a bit of, they've lost 1 in 5. So from Southend's perspective, they're not in a bad place in terms of their form. It's how they can replace some of these players and hope that they can carry on that form, going up. And again, how the other teams around them do. How will Eastleigh do? They haven't lost in 5, whereas Yeovil have only won 2 in 5. Sutton haven't 1 in 5. So all of a sudden, you've got those sort of run of 5 game patches that we talk about. If you can get more green and grey than red, then you're going to be pushing up. And it just depends what the teams around you do. Because, I don't know about you, Lou, but you look at the live scores on a Saturday and your team can fluctuate between 3 or 4 places in the league just by other results, let alone your own. So, you can only concentrate on what you can do. You can't influence other results, but they are influential in where you do end up on a Saturday at 4:45.
We saw the run that Southend went on last season, and that's why I say I do feel they're capable of doing this. The issue, of course, is Peppel being recalled by Luton is a huge loss. Southend's main issue this season has been the lack of goals. Defensively, I think they're solid once again, but the lack of goals has clearly been an issue. And when the likes of course, Macaulay Bonds come in, he's not really got going, has he, at Southend? And Moncure himself, I don't think, had the best start either. So when 2 key players come in, 2 quite marquee signings come in and don't perform, who are attackers, and then your best player gets recalled, you do feel goals-wise you're going to struggle even more. And I think since Peppel came in, they did improve on that front. What's going to be disappointing is the fact that he's been recalled now. Be interesting to know what Southend are capable of, who they can actually bring in now to replace Peppel in the future. Something else we're going to discuss tonight was, of course, Halifax Town. Of course, my club. There's actually some positive news off the field. Of course, our stadium, we've had a lot of issues with that. You've known I've kind of had rants about it week on week now for a long time about off-the-field issues. I'm quite positive on the field, I think, overall, compared to other Halifax Town fans anyway. I kind of understand the fact that we have quite a low budget and that we're actually overachieving season on season, and I'm quite happy to call myself a Halifax fan on that terms. What's disappointing is off the field in terms of facilities, the actual match day experience at the Share. And part of the reason is that down to the council owning the ground, which means the club can't really do anything in terms of catering. They can't do anything on the ground. I don't think they particularly have the funds to be able to do that either. But news has come to light, of course, for those who don't know, the Calderdale Council, who own the Shea Stadium, are actually looking to sell the stadium on. And it's looking like there's a few businessmen who are looking to own the Shea. And one that stuck out to me was, of course, Huddersfield Giants owner. Now, Huddersfield Giants, of course, are a rugby club. They're in the Super League, which is the top division of the rugby league, and they're moving out of the John Smith Stadium, which is called Huddersfield Town Stadium, who they currently share with, and they're currently looking for a temporary home. It's looking like they're actually wanting to actually come to the Share in Halifax. The issue is with the Share, it's not up to Super League standards. Of course, capacity is, everyone knows it's great for capacity. It's good for an atmosphere if there's a lot of fans in there. The issue, of course, is it's quite run down. It needs renovating, to be honest, overall. That is something Huddersfield Giants would have to do. And the Huddersfield Giants owner has actually come out and actually mentioned the fact that that's something that he's actually going to plan on doing in the future. And some of those include electric advertisement around the pitch, which is going to make it look a lot more professional. Toilets are going to be more modernised. It's a bit grim if anyone's ever been to the Shea in terms of like the toilets and that side of things. I think a new bar, more hospitality suites are going to be added. So it's looking very, very positive overall. A new hybrid pitch as well. That's probably the main point as well, which means we won't have as many postponements as what we have now. The issue is, and this is why I'm going to ask you, Paul, what you think on this, is the fact that it's a temporary home for Huddersfield Giants. And Ken Davey, who of course is the Huddersfield Giants owner, has actually pointed out it's a big if, but if we did move to Halifax for a year or so, then he would make all these improvements. What I'm going to ask you is, what I don't get is why he'd come to the Shea for a year to make all these improvements, but then afterwards he's going to move out because Huddersfield Giants are going to make their own stadium back in Huddersfield. What's going to happen to the Shea then, do you feel?
Well, it depends. You've got to look at it positively, I suppose, Luke, because like you said, at the moment, the fan experience isn't one that's to write home about. So if he's going to come in and improve that off the field experience and improve the stadium, be it through catering or the toilets, etc., then I suppose you just got to take it and know that he's not going to be there forever. It just depends to what level he does it. I mean, he clearly needs to get the ground up to Super League standard. So there's going to be things he has to do which will benefit the football club because they're going to have those facilities as well. I mean, it would be a bit of a shame if he comes in, only stays a year, does what he does and goes. I guess what then has to happen is whoever manages the ground after that, be it the council, be it Halifax Town, be it the Halifax Rugby League team, is to build on those changes that are made, those positive changes that are made, and keep the upkeep of it going so that it becomes a better experience for those fans. I wouldn't suggest there's a negative in it because, like you said, at the moment the ground as it is, having been there a couple of years ago, it's adequate, it's okay, but it's a bit soulless, isn't it? There's not a lot going on. If he can improve that, then Halifax Town have got to take that on board and go, right, great, let's grip this and let move forward with it once they're gone.
The thing is, and I've said this a lot about Halifax, I genuinely feel this club has potential. I feel it has the potential to get healthy attendances and make it into a good atmosphere. I've been there when there has been times when it's been a really good atmosphere on quite a regular basis. The last time was probably Pete Wild's final season when we finished 4th. The atmosphere was really good that season. I love going down to the Shea. I'll be totally honest, at times now, in certain games, when you've got games at home, you're a bit like, oh, it's the Shea, it's going to be a bit soulless, it's going to be really cold. To be honest, at times nowadays, and it's like once in a blue moon when there's a good atmosphere, when it's a big game. Whereas I feel this club has the potential to make it a really good atmosphere on a regular basis, for it to be a really good match day experience. We've clearly got the space. I think if you could get that terrace 3/4 full, which it has been in the past, it would be a terrific atmosphere there. Probably in terms of away days, I know other people say Halifax is one of the best in the country, particularly when you've got the terrace with you as well behind the goal. It's just such a good atmosphere, and I do feel there's so much potential with this club. Someone's actually come in and said adds value if he gets money from elsewhere. He could make a tidy profit when he sells it on, and yeah, that's the case. But the question is, who's going to buy it? And I think that's probably me being quite negative and pessimistic at the moment, is the fact that no one seemed interested since I've been supporting the club. Perhaps if this all did go through, then that would change in the future. But no, it's looking positive, and it's looking positive for a lot of clubs at the moment. I know Wealdstone there, one looking to have a bit of a bigger ground and expand on it. Barnet moving back to Barnet. Maiden, I know they've had a few hurdles in their way and obstacles, but their long-term plan is to move out of their current stadium as well. So it is looking a little bit more positive now overall. Something I wanted to ask you as well tonight, Paul. Billy Waters recalled from Halifax, from Wrexham, I believe. Recalled from Halifax back to Wrexham. It's looking like he's going to be sold now on a permanent basis. A bit like Reed with you guys. I think that's kind of similar to us losing Billy Waters. I'm not sure whether we're going to try getting back on loan or not, but I have heard from different people in the division, and I'm not going to name those people, but there has been rumours about Billy Waters, and people are just going to have to take my word for this. They're quite respectable people. If that makes sense. On these rumours. I'm going to ask you, Paul, what clubs could you see Billy Waters potentially rocking up at in the future? I know I've put you on the spot there, but where do you feel he could fit? You're mute.
As a permanent deal, Luke? I mean, has he regularly played for Halifax? If I'm honest, I've not taken much notice of how much he has played.
He's probably not got the amount of goals that he got last time, but I don't put that down to his ability. I put that down to the system, and I still think he's done a half-decent job.
Yeah, nice. I mean, he's coming out of a League One team, isn't he? I know he hasn't featured much for Wrexham. It may be that he gets loaned to a League Two side rather than National League side. Don't get me wrong, we've just, as you say, we just lost Alex Reid, we've just lost Henry Sander. I'd love to see someone like him come down and play at the Stones, but that's going to be very unlikely. I know there was discussions around the fact that he is from the South originally, and does that, does he want to come back home and come further south, having been down in South Wales and obviously up in the north with you guys. So, yeah, it's a really, really difficult one. I mean, I don't know what the rumours are of where he may go. He's probably not going to go back to any of his former clubs, and I certainly can't see him being at Wrexham. Although Wrexham have loaned out lads up in Scotland. He's gone out of my head. Who was played in the National League as well. So I don't know whether they need players back Wrexham. But he never got a sniff even in League Two, did he? So
no. He hasn't really got a sniff since he's gone there, to be honest.
No, not really. I think it was a bit of an unusual signing. I know how much you would wanted him back at the Halifax, when he went to Wrexham, sort of thing. So I'd love to see him at Wealdstone. I think we'd give him game time and he could be a real difference for us. I don't know whether he's going to drop. No disrespect to the teams like Wealdstone in that bottom half of the National League, but he's coming from a League Two side. He's playing for Halifax, who are knocking on the doors of the playoffs. I can only see that it's going to be a permanent deal either to a National League side or a League Two side.
From a selfish perspective, I want him to come back to Halifax. For him personally, if I was his agent, I would suggest not going back to Halifax because I don't feel he fits into our system. I know he wanted to come back to Halifax. He had other offers from elsewhere. Chester, who I think do have a bit more money, of course, in the league below. They wanted him. I think a few other National League clubs as well wanted him on loan. But he chose Halifax. Since he's come back, I think he scored 5 goals in 15 appearances, which isn't too bad at all, particularly in our system. But I don't feel we're getting the best out of him, and I don't think we will with the way we play. And I don't feel we have the players to be able to change our style to suit him. So for him personally, I think there's better options for him to go to. Now, if it's a case of him moving back down south, I don't particularly know where he's based. It might be that he actually lives permanently in England, in the north now. But of course, he's from Surrey originally. When I think of sides in the south that I could potentially see him at, it's hard to say without him dropping into the National League South. Of course, there's a few League Two clubs that I think wouldn't mind him. I think for me, if he dropped into National League South, could you see him back at Torquay? I know Torquay fans liked him as a player, and he didn't really get a sniff under Gary Johnson at the time, a bit like how he was at Wrexham. But a lot of Torquay fans liked him. In terms of other sides in this division, maybe a Dagenham, someone like that. But for me, if it's a case of him relocating to be down south, then it could literally be anyone because it's just about relocation. It's a bit like reading it moving back up north. If it's a case of him actually wanting to get in a system what he likes, where he's getting a little bit more money, then it's kind of restricted, isn't it, in this division? I think for me, if I had to pick an ideal club, I think he'd suit Gateshead. I think you look at Oseni leaving at the moment, just leave him. You look at the way Gateshead plays, it's on the floor constantly. He's a small player, he's a finisher. He's very, very good at finding positions to put himself in a good goal-scoring opportunity. He's very, very good at that. He's a bit like a fox in the box. And look at the way Gateshead play, and I think that'd be a perfect signing for them. The case is, of course, if he's wanting to move closer to home, if that's in the north, Gateshead's another 2 hours further up north from Manchester and Yorkshire. And of course, if he's wanting to be down south, then it's a very, very long journey, isn't it? So for me, I think the perfect option in this league, I'd say go to Gateshead. I think they have a little bit more money than Halifax as well nowadays, as well, in terms of the playing budget. Other clubs, it's quite hard to say, putting it on the spot. Maybe a Forest Green, he gives them a bit of a different option. He's not your typical target man. It's just very hard to say, isn't it, overall?
Yeah. I mean, there's so many clubs that would take someone like Billy Walters tomorrow, but it's just knowing whether, if he wants to go there, whether he's got the desire to play there, that sort of thing. So it's a really difficult one, but I don't think he's going back to Halifax because otherwise he wouldn't be recalled to go back. I know that sometimes happens with players, but that generally happens if a player's done particularly well and is assessed by their management to see whether they're going to be okay from January onwards, or whether they're called back because actually they haven't played many minutes, so they need a different club that are going to give them minutes, or in fact the manager's changed and the manager brings them back in just to assess them, to say, well, I'm new, I need to see the squad, and then actually I'll send them back out. So it'd be interesting to see where he goes. I don't think it will be Halifax because he has been recalled. I can't see him going to National League South, but then again, we don't know his personal circumstances. We don't know what may be on offer from National League South upwards. So, yeah, he's one player that will be of interest, definitely.
Brilliant. Just looking at final comments, and then we're probably at a point now where we'll come on to the predictions. It's a bit of an awkward one this week because we're giving our predictions and knowing that there's going to be a fair few that are going to end up being called off. We've also had come in tonight. Villa TV's, of course, also a Tamworth fan, and said, big up, lads. Big weekend up the Tamworth. Yeah, Tamworth versus Tottenham. Maybe would you want to predict some of the FA Cup games on the spot?
I don't see Tamworth winning as an example, but Tottenham have got some injury issues, as we know. We saw them last night play against Liverpool, and they lost another player in Bentancur. So I can't see him going very strong. Tottenham fans will say he's not really got an awful lot of choice because he hasn't got a lot of players to choose from. But you guarantee those that were probably on the bench last night will play Saturday. He doesn't want egg on his face, Postecoglou. He wants to stay in the FA Cup. Tamworth will give everything they can to win, but I just think it's because they're playing a Premier League side that have got European experience. So as long as Tamworth put in a good performance, they aren't disgraced. All those sorts of things we talk about from lower league teams playing the Premier teams in this sort of competition. I think Tottenham will probably handsomely win, especially if they score early. I don't know, 4-0, 4-1. I hope Tamworth score for the sake of their fans and they can celebrate a goal and that sort of thing. So, but yeah, I think Tottenham are probably just a little bit of a step too far for Tamworth at this time.
So we do for the FA Cup. Do you want to do exact predictions and put it on the predictions league, or would you rather give that a miss?
Oh no, don't put that on the predictions league, Luke. No, I'm bad enough. I'm bad enough as it is. I struggle with National League, so yeah. I don't think that's a good idea. Maybe FA Trophy later on later on, but no, not FA Cup as well. Blimey, I've got no hair as it is, Luke.
Fair enough, then. To be fair, but I see how it is. To be fair, but of course, just to let you know, and any Tamworth fans that are watching, I did an interview with Tommy Tonks from Tamworth. Spoke a bit about his career at Tamworth. It was more about Tamworth than his entire career as a whole. And of course, the FA Cup game coming up, we touched on that as well. So if any Tamworth fans are watching and want to see that, watch this podcast and then afterwards tomorrow, go check that out, please, as well. We've had Booby who's come and said, Deepak would be a good signing for Wealdstone on loan. He wasted out on the wing. He's wasted out on the wing at York. He was willing to go to Chesterfield. I thought the deal was basically done, and then some technicality happened, and he didn't end up moving there. So would I see him at Wealdstone? It's hard to say because Wealdstone are part-time. He's quite a well thought of player. I think even in League Two, League Two clubs would happily take him on. I think in terms of like the perfect fit, he would probably be perfect for Wealdstone. Bit like Billy Watts with Gateshead. The question is, how realistic is that? We don't have particularly much inside knowledge whatsoever. We get the odd message every so often. We're not like these. We're not. What's that guy online? Pete O'Rourke or whatever his name is. We're not like him. I don't know how he gets all his information, to be fair. But no, I've won a few more comments, and it is of course Joss has come in. Paul.
Yeah, he's got to say Gateshead manager deserves a crack at a club with money. Sat behind him at your game and was really impressed. So professional, unlike a couple of weeks ago when Kevin Mayer was there. I mean, listen, Joss, I think if you look at how Mike Williamson has done at Gateshead, and then who was after him that's gone? It's gone out of my head again. Who he took over from.
Carlton. Rob Elliott or
Elliott. So Elliott's gone to Crawley, yeah. So
Crawley, yeah.
I think Joss, if you were impressed with him at the weekend, then others are going to be impressed with him. And he's having to go through that whole predicament that that they had to go through last year with Rob Elliott and losing players in January, where they were in a position of strength and they still lost players and they found new players and they carried on going. They've won cups. They've got to Wembley. That club is fantastic for that. And I think, it's testament to Gateshead that they find these managers, that these managers are able to adapt to what they have at the football club and get the best out of them to give them what they give the fans over the last few years. And the fact that they've then gone on to Football League management, to two of them. And that's not to say that this chap won't do the same. And I don't think Gateshead will want that too much, do you? But if they do lose their third manager to the Football League, but you're right. I think he's a young manager. He's been in the Gateshead setup. He went away, came back, and I think he'll probably do well again for them, and he'll probably kick on.
Waff, I think it's come in. Waff 47. Well, I love some of these names. Seems like Chesterfield just tried to sign deeper, but deal fell through when they released the fee. We'd want the majority of the 250k paid back. Does any York fans know the exact fee for Stones as well? We've tried to avoid that tonight. I ain't got your take on it, Paul. And I wanted to ask you this because you overall, I know what you think of Ugla this season. You think he's done a fairly decent job. You actually called for York to have a good season, and they certainly have done so far. Last season, you were spot on with your take on York, to be honest. And not many people saw that overall. What I will say, though, Josh Stone signing from Oldham was doing decent at Oldham. You look at his career as a whole, the only place he's actually really kicked on is his loan spells at Oldham. Of course, very young himself. Oldham have then tried to sign him on a permanent basis, and then York have come in and just splashed the cash and basically outspent Oldham overall. Now, we don't know if Oldham was a case of they just simply couldn't afford him or they weren't willing to pay that fee. We don't actually know. My take on it is that it's purely down to, majority, I should say, down to Ugla trying to make a statement to the division. I personally don't think it's a case of York have gone out there and thought, he's the best option for us, let's go and get him. I think it's to weaken a title contender and to also make a huge statement to the division that we've got this financial muscle. I don't know what it is overall.
Yeah, possibly. I think the first one, definitely, these football clubs have analysts and they've got managers who know players and they've got agents who know players, and they're not naive to not know who's doing well and who isn't doing well across the national leagues, north, south, and the top division, as well as some of the feeder leagues. So they clearly have seen what Josh Stones can do, and I think you're right. I think it's more a case of actually, whilst we're in a position of strength, and this is where good teams are, is when you're in a position of strength and you can afford to strengthen even further, you go and do it. And as much as we talk about Ugla, and I think he mismanaged his money at Yeovil and the recruitment there, he's been very much better at York, and there's very much more measured approach. And, I've got no problem with Matt Ugla spending a six-figure fee on a player, because if he feels that's going to strengthen the team, and I think Adam Hinchell would as well, coming from Worthing, and where they were very good at recruitment as well, you'd like to think he's got a big influence on this. It's not a case of we're just going to sign Josh Stones to piss off Oldham. I think it's a case of we're signing Josh Stones because he's playing really well in a playoff team in the division. And actually, we could do with another centre forward. So let's go and get him, and we can afford it. Yes, it does. It does send a statement to the rest of the league, and we all sit back and go, "Blimey, you know, they mean business." But I think we know that they've meant business from day one. You know, since Hinchelwood came in and they got through last season, I think we can see that they do mean business just from how they've started to play. It's disappointing for Oldham. I completely understand that, but that is the lottery of taking a player on loan and that player doing well for you in a team. There's many players that come on loan and they're a bit indifferent and they come and go and you remember them and it's a stepping stone for their career. But you know, don't set the world alight in your colours of your team. He's certainly one that has done that. So you know, he's got to look at his long-term future. What have they given him, a 2.5, 3.5 year deal? You know, as a young lad getting a 3.5 year deal with a club that are likely to be in the EFL next season, what more likely than Oldham at this stage, and that's, you know, I'm not saying Oldham can't get up, but they're more likely to be in it than, you know, he's got to look and go, well, do you know what? I'm going to take the chance and go to York.
I disagree overall about him signing because I think York have looked at him thinking he's a great player and bringing him in. He's very young. A lot of people rate Stones very highly, and of course I respect that. I've seen him a couple of occasions. I can't say that I'm an expert. Of course, Oldham fans will have a better judge on him. I've not actually seen him inside a stadium. I've seen highlights, and I've seen him, I think, on National League TV before when Oldham have been playing, and that's about it, to be honest. So I can't judge him as a player completely. But if you're going based off stats, you're going based off his career as a whole. Yes, he's 21 years of age, and yes, York fans, when I came back and said, well, if it's a case of them wanting to sign a player because he's proven a goal scorer, then why didn't they sign Regan Linney, who's at Altrincham? Because he wouldn't have cost as much, I don't think, because there were no other contenders for him that we know of. Then York fans came back at me and said, well, he's 26. We want someone who's young. And I totally respect that. I then put forward Oseni, who's, of course, gone on to St Mirren. Now, if you compare Oseni, who's gone to St Mirren, and you compare Stones, Oseni's got a better track record over a couple of seasons. Something you will say about Stones, no matter how good of a player he is, he's got a terrible injury record as well so far in his career. Oseni's had a good start to his career. Rushall Olympic, come through the league, scored a number of goals there, made the step up to Gateshead, 14 goals scored this season so far. Why wouldn't you go out and think, let's go and sign him instead of Stones, who's got a bad injury record? And for me personally, they've done it because they know it's Oldham. They know they're another big dog in this division overall, and they know that they're going to weaken a title contender. If they'd have took a player off Gateshead, they wouldn't have been the same exposure as what they is now. And that's no disrespect to Gateshead whatsoever, but they wouldn't have been the same exposure. Gateshead overall, and for me personally, a contender in the same way Oldham have. I don't think they've got the potential to be the same contender as what Oldham previously have done. And I think that's purely down to them just wanting to weaken York overall. They didn't, for me, even need a striker. They had Akane Yemi. People come out and say, yeah, but we're looking to sell him. The reason they were looking to sell him was because he wasn't getting in the team. Like someone's mentioned, he was getting forced out to the wing. A player like that who got, I think, scored 17 goals last season for York or something around that mark should not be being forced out onto the wing. And that is because, of course, Pearce is coming in. That's a perfect signing for them. I'm not disputing that whatsoever. The recruitment overall for York has been spot on this season. Stones will probably turn out to be a good player. But did they necessarily need him? Were they better options? I personally feel they was. And I think they've done the reason behind this is to weaken a title contender, and that's what it's down to overall. Otherwise, they would have looked at other options. So that's what my thoughts are overall. I know it's an unpopular one, but it's just my thoughts. Everyone's got an opinion overall. Tuado, do you reckon we should probably move on to predictions now? We'll move on to go on. So I think you're mute.
Yeah, no, Luke, I don't disagree. I think there is a big thing around let's strengthen while we're in the position we are. And the fact that, you know, you could look at it very cynically and say, yeah, we've taken Oldham out of the game a little bit by taking one of their star players for the first half of the season. But I think it will be more a case of he's just banging form. And you can never have enough good players, especially if you can afford to have them. And you know, York can now rotate amongst their forwards. They've got strength in depth, and that's exactly what you want when you're at that top end of the league.
Yeah, I think he'll do well at York. I just think the whole reason behind it is not because York have seen a good player. I think it is partly because of that. I'm not disputing that, but I don't think it's a fact of York have gone. Yeah, we'll have Stones because he's clearly doing well at Oldham at the moment. They've done it because they've looked at Oldham for that's a title contender there, big club. We'll get a lot of exposure if we sign this player. We're weakening a title contender. We're making a statement because otherwise they would have gone out and signed another striker like Osene, who scored 14 goals so far this season, got a better injury record. So that's just my thoughts are overall. And as well, no matter what the fee is, someone's reported it's 150 grand. That's still overpaying, I think, for a player like Stones, who's overall is unproven. He's done well at Oldham in his loan spells, but that's the only place he's actually impressed so far. And I do think he'll go on to have a good career, but he's also got a bad injury record. So that's just my thoughts overall. And we've kind of overdone it. I spoke about it on the last podcast tonight. We'll move on from that now. I'm sure a few people will have something to say in the comments, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see. But no, we'll get on to the predictions then. Of course, that's what the main part of the podcast is. Of course, the Predictions League, I forgot to even get that up. Of course, Connie did the predictions last time, Paul.
Yeah.
Of course, your daughter, for those who don't know, I think I've got it up here.
She did all right, to be fair.
Beat me. So, yeah.
There you go.
No,
she hasn't done it today. I've done them all today. She wasn't around to help me, so I'm back helping. Having to look at it myself. So I'm hoping for a few postpones this week rather than sort of actual games going ahead, just to see whether I can. I don't get too stretched away again because what is it? 8 points still. Bloody hell! I've got something to try and catch up on there, haven't I?
You've got Connie back as well for next week if
I know, yeah.
Yeah, it's doable now because of that 2 points gained. If you get a bit of momentum, it's like in the title race, isn't it? You could be back in it.
Yeah, exactly that. So we'll wait and see. But I'll give you my predictions. My predictions this week, fingers crossed, they're going to be hopefully not too bad, as long as obviously the games go ahead.
Of course, the Predictions League is sponsored by PTS Travel. Do you want to just give that a plug quickly before we get onto the predictions?
Yeah, so it's the company that obviously my wife and I run. So anyone's got any holiday needs, please give us a call. It's the peak time of year, January, February, March. Everyone comes out of Christmas thinking, right, what am I going to do this year? I'm going to buy a new car, going to sort of move house, change job, and the big one is let's look forward to a holiday or two. So yeah, any holiday needs, we're quite busy at the moment with inquiries for all different trips. So please don't hesitate to give me a call. You're not obliged to book a holiday with us. We don't cost anything over and above what it costs you to go on holiday. Our service is free. So we'd be happy to help you, and it'd be good to have some of the podcast family on board.
Tell you what isn't a good start to the year either. I haven't even given the channel sponsors a plug either so far. Of course, are the channel sponsors. Please remember to check them out. There's a link in the description. You get 50% off your card machine if you use them. You'll get 50%. I've mentioned that. You'll get 50% off your order, yeah. No contracts or monthly fees. Right then, we'll get on with the predictions. Yeah, let's get on with the predictions then. First game that we will have a look at then will be, and get to the correct round, game week 26, Fylde versus Sutton. Two sides that aren't in the best of form at the moment, and that's just brilliant. But two sides that are not in the best of form at the moment. Sutton, of course, conceding late against Aldershot. That seems to be a current theme at the moment, is conceding when they're late, when they're actually taking the lead. They did it against Barnet as well. Fylde themselves not on the best of form. A win against Ebbsfleet, but apart from that, you look at the form, it's not looking too good for them. How do you see this one going?
It's one of those where I don't think any team want to lose the game. Sutton have made a couple of signings, haven't they? And they're looking to push on. I've gone with a 2-2 draw. I think Sutton aren't. They're okay, and Fylde are okay, and I mean, if it happens, because it's up in the north, it's right up in the northwest, isn't it? So they'll probably be probably be having a snowball fight. It'd be 2-2 in snowball fights. But I've gone with a 2-2 draw at this stage.
Of course, you can play along as well. I think it's 3 points if you get the exact prediction correct. So that's like saying 2-1, and it ends up being 2-1. And you get 1 point if you said like they won 3-1, they're going to win 3-0, and they ended up winning like 1-0 or 4-3 or whatever. So that's how it goes. And of course, 0 points if you don't get anything correct. But yeah, if you want to do that, you can put your comments in the live chat and count how many points you've got at the end of the week, and please let us know as well. I know Chris, a channel member, he's played along throughout the whole season, and I think he's beaten both of us, Paul.
So
good lad, but another game then we'll have a look at. I forgot to actually send me prediction for this. Fylde versus Sutton. I'm moving too fast tonight. Fylde versus Sutton. I'm going to go, I think I went for a 2-2 draw for this game. Yeah, 2-2 draw. Both sides not in the best of form. Fylde are known to concede a lot of goals, but to be fair to them, can score a fair few themselves as well. Sutton haven't won in 5, but 3 draws in that time. So I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw. Next game then, Aldershot versus Solihull Moors. In the reverse fixture, Aldershot gave Solihull a pretty good game at Solihull's ground. They lost 2-1 in the last minute, so Aldershot will be wanting revenge in this one. Aldershot 3 draws in the last 5, I believe. Of course, those draws came against Forest Green. Forest Green, trying to think of those games now. Forest Green, Sutton, and Woking. I got there in the end. I think it'll be another draw for this one. Aldershot at home, a lot better than what they are overall away. Solihull, it's a tough place to go. So for me, overall, I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 3-1 win to Solihull. I just think they're going to be too strong for Aldershot. I mean, Aldershot are still... Yeah, I mean, 3 draws against are quite respectable against the teams they've drawn against. But Solihull, they are in the playoffs. They've got to try and stay in the playoffs. And I think they've got to earmark one of the games like this to say, this is a winnable game. Shots defensively aren't always the best, and I think Solihull are just solid throughout, aren't they? They're fairly consistent. There's nothing really exciting about Solihull, and that's no disrespect to them. They just get the job done. So I've gone with Solihull 3, Shots 1.
Altrincham versus Wealdstone. I have to say, Paul, this is one of the type of games that I feel will be called off. Altrincham only back. Go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think there's a pitch inspection at 10:45 tomorrow morning. So I'm looking at the photo they posted with it. I don't think there's much chance the game's going to be on, to be honest. So yeah, it's full of snow up there. So yeah, it's not going to. I doubt it will be on, but you never know.
My prediction for this, if it does somehow go on, I've gone for a 1-0 Altrincham win. Like I've said with Wealdstone, I just feel losing Reed, still looking to recruit players, losing to Maidenhead as well. I think this will be a tough game, particularly when Altrincham are trying to hunt down a playoff spot this season. I think it'll be difficult for Altrincham, but I think they'll manage to get all 3 points. I'm going 1-0 Altrincham.
Yeah, I've gone with a 3-1 win for Altrincham. I mean, I may be a little bit harsh on my own team here that they're going to let 3 goals in, but Reagan Linney is playing up top. We're not going to be the strongest in midfield. Fortunately, the players that are injured or missing or suspended aren't from the back 3. So we've got a solid, consistent back 3, and the goalie's shown up quite well. A young lad from Portsmouth, young Steward. So yeah, I just think that, with Linney, I think it's just, especially, I think it's going to be a tough afternoon if the game goes ahead. I put us down to score a goal, so I think that is a positive, but I think we'll lose 3-1.
Next game then, and I think, in my personal opinion, this is game of the game week. An informed Hartlepool, who've just beaten Oldham at home, are going to a Barnet side who, although they've remained unbeaten in the last couple of weeks, the wins have kind of slowed down. It took them a long time, didn't it, Barnet, to actually draw the game and even drop points at home. They've dropped points at home in the last 2 games to, of course, my team, the Mighty Shaman, and also Sutton. Against Hartlepool, not the type of side you're wanting to play if you're wanting to get back to winning. Well, want to get back to winning instead of drawing games, to stay in touching distance of York, because if you do draw this game, York go on to win or Forest Green, then there's going to be start to create a little bit of a gap, isn't there? For me, like I said, I think this is a really tough game for Barnet. But I just think they're going to really need to turn up the gears for this one. And although Hartlepool have been a lot better under Lenny Lawrence, you look at the 2 away defeats they've come against sides inside those playoffs, and particularly in the title race in York and Gateshead. So for me, I think Barnet will be able to get through this one 2-1. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 2-2 draw, actually. It's I think you're right, Luke. This is a really good National League game, isn't it? Yeah, both teams. I mean, it depends how you look at it with Barnet. They haven't lost in 5. They've only won 1 in 5 because obviously they've got 4 draws. So it really depends how you can see what Barnet's fortunes are. I mean, what Barnet have got to be mindful of is York are only 1 point ahead, but they've got a game in hand. Forest Green dropped points in the week. They've now got they're only 1 point ahead. So it's a real advantage for Barnet if they can get a few wins to try and sort of nip at that Forest Green York total. But at the same token, Hartlepool, depends on other results, could be in the playoffs at the end of Saturday. So a really, really good game. I agree with you. I think this is game of the week, and I think it will be 2-2. I've just got this gut feel that they're both good at the moment. They both can score goals, both a little bit susceptible, and it'll be 2-2.
Yeah, both got prolific goal scorers. I know Kabamba, probably in these specific performances, probably haven't been up to scratch, but he's still scored a fair amount of goals this season. And of course, Hartlepool aren't short strikers either, with Medine and Desavu. Boston versus Ebbsfleet, them. I remember us both making a point. I think it was you, it might have been Rob I was with to preview this one, but we both made a point about in the reverse fixture, which was just before Christmas. This is either club's last chance here. Someone has got to win this game to have any chance of being able to stay up this season. It ended up being a 0-0 draw. It'll be a 0-0 draw again. I think these two sides are doomed, particularly Ebbsfleet, and I think everyone agrees with that, but I also think Boston are heading that way as well. I'm going to go for another 0-0 draw. I just can't see either side scoring. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 2-0 win for Boston. They're at home. They're playing a team that are all over the show in Ebbsfleet. They have got to win. I think they've got to win more than Ebbsfleet have got to win, because Ebbsfleet, if they win all their games coming up, I still don't think they're going to sort of stay up. But I think there's more in it for Boston than, say, Ebbsfleet. So I think, and they're being at home. So, you got to look at Wealdstone and Boston, that one of their games in hand is against each other. So these teams have got to keep getting points, because they're going to take points off each other at some point in the rest of the season with the games coming up. So, yeah, I think Boston will win 2-0.
Next game then, Gateshead versus Braintree. Of course, Gateshead, a bit like Oldham, had a difficult couple of weeks, losing Whelan, losing Radcliffe, and losing Oseni, and of course losing in the league to York, and in the FA Trophy I may add to Boston as well. As for Braintree themselves, they need to get a bit of a run of form together. I've mentioned about sides it being really poor towards the bottom, and I think Braintree are another side for me where I expected better with the recruitment that they did, and of course in the Effing Young leaving and signing for Woking just shows that they haven't been able to get the best out of him this season either. He's already scored more league goals for Woking than what he did for Braintree, and I think although they've lost a lot of key players, I still think they'll have too much for Braintree, and I'm going to go for a 2-0 win to Gateshead.
Yeah, I've gone with 3-0, Luke. I think I echo your sentiments. As much as they're going to lose players, they're going to be too strong. They're at home. That's a long journey. If it goes ahead, I don't know whether they'll be. It's a very open stadium, isn't it, up at Gateshead? So I know last week was swapped around so they could get the game played. So if it doesn't get played Saturday, it's an even harder gig for Braintree, because they're going to have to go there midweek potentially. So. I just think that he will comfortably win 3-0.
I don't blame you, to be honest, either. One person has actually backed Braintree to win. Won't get anything if we play like we did against Boston. Need 3 or 4 players in, and that's from a Gateshead fan as well. I think what I'm getting is, I think at first for Gateshead, it was more of a case of accepting when they lost Rob Elliott, when they lost a few players in the summer. I think they all just accepted the fact that, look, this is where we are as a club in the hierarchy. If we want to be where we are in the league, then this is how we've got to recruit, to be honest. finding fringe players from the Football League and academies and bringing them into the club. The issue with Gateshead, where they are in the food chain, is the fact that when a player does impress, they can't keep hold of the players or management team either. And I think this time around in the January transfer window, it did feel like online a lot of Gateshead fans were getting quite frustrated, particularly after the York game when it was clear they were missing the striker as well in that one overall. So for me, I think Gateshead will need to get back to winning ways, but it does feel like there's a bit of a frustration in the fan base at the moment in terms of losing those players. Maidenhead versus York then. In the last couple of years, Maidenhead has always been seen as a fortress. This season, it's a place that a lot of sides who are doing well in the league are particularly enjoying themselves, let's put it that way. Forest Green, I think, put 4 past them. York actually put 6 past them at the Linear Stadium this season. A lot of sides have done well against them. I think Gateshead as well. I think they did well against Maidenhead as well and scored a fair few amount. For me, I think York will be able to win this one. I'm going to go for a 2-0 win. How do you see it going?
I've gone with 4-1 to York. You know, they're going to have Josh Stones in their ranks. They've got Joe Felix. They've got he's got our head. I keep getting these bloody players' names. Ollie Pearce. You know, I saw Oldham play. I saw Maidenhead play on Boxing Day, and as much as they had a lot of character and a lot of resolve and a lot of endeavour, you know, they were playing a Wealdstone team that were out of sorts after a good run. So York are going to be a massively different kettle of fish to that game, and I think York will win handsomely by a few goals, and I've gone with 4-1.
I need to add as well, I know I keep going on about it, but if Stone, which he probably will end up doing, comes on and scores, I've never said that I didn't think he'd do well at York. I said he wasn't the best option. That's what I said. So before everyone comes on the podcast next week, and my reason for them signing them stays the exact same, no matter if he goes on to be York's greatest all-time player. I still stand by the same reason why they've signed them, by the way. But no, we'll move on to the next game now. Oldham versus Eastleigh. Of course, Oldham, a bit like Gates said, a bit unlike them. You know, losing players. Of course, Clucas leaving. Of course, Clucas hasn't left yet, actually, but he's rumoured for him to leave. A lot of League One clubs interested in signing him. Of course, an ex-Premier League player himself. And also Oldham losing Stones, who they couldn't sign on a permanent deal. And, of course, in the league as well, losing to Hartlepool and then dropping points at Eastleigh as well. But after they played Eastleigh at midweek, they're now playing them at home on Saturday. I think Oldham will get back to winning ways. I think there's going to be a reaction there, and I'm going to go for 4-1 Oldham win. How do you see it going?
4-1. That's I've gone with the 2-1 win. Mm-hmm. I don't think they'll not be as bad, but I don't think they'll struggle as much at Eastleigh at home to Eastleigh as they do away. Eastleigh have got good firepower. We know that. It's just, I think Oldham have, and from a Wealdstone perspective, a lot of fans were watching if Alex Reid would play or not. He came on as sub. Within 5 minutes of him coming on sub, they scored 2 goals. Not suggesting he was the influence, but it's they've probably got strength in depth on their bench that can change games, and that's what you need at this level. And I think what they didn't do last year was use Boundary Park as a little bit of a fortress. They're a little bit more like that this year, and I think that will continue. And they'll win 2-1 against a very resolute Eastleigh. Eastleigh haven't lost in 5, but they've a bit like Barnet. They've only won 1 in 5. They've 4 draws, so they've got to turn those draws into wins if they want to be playoff contenders. And I think Oldham need to win. They've gobbled up some of their games in hand and not taken advantage of that. So they just need to sort of keep winning, because those teams above them are still winning and drawing as well.
100%. And it's something just to add on Reid finally. When he does actually play, if that's for Oldham or if it's for Wealdstone, he does actually score. If you look at his goal record, it is pretty healthy throughout his time at Oldham. It's just the fact he didn't play too much, and with that video, didn't particularly do him any favours either. But like I said, he did well at Wealdstone, and I think for me, I don't know what Oldham's long-term plans are with him, but for the short term, losing Stones, I don't think you could probably get a better short-term option when you've actually got someone in the building like him overall, to be honest, because if they do, I think Oldham can get the best out of him if they play him. Moving on to the next game then now, Southend versus Halifax, my side. Halifax have a bit of a difficult, a bad record actually at Southend. Since Southend have dropped back into the National League, Halifax haven't won at Wealdstone or even picked up a result there, I should add. I think this will be the first time we pick a result up. Both sides are very good defensively. Both sides have their issues going forward. Of course, both before were pretty poor going forward overall, but Waters has been recalled since, and from Southend's perspective, they've lost Peppel as well. So I'm actually going to go for a 0-0 draw for this game. How do you see it going?
I've gone with a 1-1 draw.
I think it's time to guess it's low scoring, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that gut feel was it wasn't going to be a hugely high scoring match. And, added to the fact that they both lost their centre forwards, I guess, that would probably have played and are likely to be the ones that could score the goals or will score the goals. So, yeah, I've gone with the 1-1 draw rather than 0-0.
Next game that we'll have a look at then will be Yeovil versus Woking in the reverse fixture. Of course, Yeovil went to Woking and actually won, but a lot has changed since then. Woking, of course, the takeover's gone through fully. They've had a new manager in Neil Ardley, who's picked up 7 points in a possible of 9. Innie Effingham has come in as well and got off to a good start. For me, I think this is going to be a really tricky game for Woking. For Yeovil, and I'm actually going to back Woking to win. I'm going to back them to win 2-0. How do you see it going?
I've gone the reverse. I've gone with a 2-1 win to Yeovil. They've signed McGuckin back from Rotherham, who was a real bright spot for them in the first half of the season. He got called back and was at Rotherham for a few weeks. He's come back again, so he clearly enjoyed his time at Yeovil and they got the best out of him, and he's back. And they've just signed a lad that was a free agent after being at Forest Green. So they've added a couple in. I've read today that they've, apart from I think it was Alex Whittle, they've got a full squad to choose from. So I think with Yeovil being at home at Hewish Park as well, that will give them a little bit of an advantage. But it will be a tight game without a shadow of a doubt. I think you're right, Luke. It really could go either way, this one. And I think it will just go in favour of Yeovil this time.
Moving on to the next one then. And I think, that's next week actually, isn't it? I think we've wrapped up the fixtures now. Yeah, is that it overall? I think it is,
That's done,
brilliant. Right, so we have done, hopefully, amount of those fixtures do end up going on this week. The majority of them. I think for me, Altrinchem's game, that's the one I think will definitely be off. If I had to predict a game that I think will guarantee to be off, I'd predict that one. A lot of people saying Gateshead's game as well is likely to be off too overall. But it's been good to have you on once again, Paul.
No problem, mate. Nice to be back. Happy New Year to everybody out there.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Of course, these are the results at the moment. Of course, Paul's team, I think I can say now, have pulled a few points back. He started off by getting a BBC Surrey commentator to get him back. Then he had to end up retiring, and Paul's come back. He's then gone to his daughter, who's actually done a better job than him as well. So that just says it all, to be honest. It's just cheating, to be honest, overall. But no, please remember to like and subscribe as well. And if you'd like to support the channel further, you can become a channel member for £2.99 a month. You get custom emojis in the live chat for your club. And when we bring out interviews, you'll get early access. For example, a Tommy Tonks interview, you got an early access by, I think, a day or so. Justin Rees, I think you got a few days early access as well. And in the future, that'll be the same with interviews we do as well. But I may add as well, those interviews will come out to everyone. I'll never do an interview with someone and not make it accessible to everyone, because that's how we've been all along with the channel. So don't panic if you don't want to become a channel member. But if you do, of course, £2.99 a month. There's a link in the description for you to do that. But no, thank you to everyone that's tuned in tonight. Paul, once again, I do really appreciate you joining me. And you can spend the whole of 2025 as a co-host. I think you will be doing anyway, but let's let me word it differently. Let's hope Wealdstone can survive.
Yeah. January and February is going to be an interesting one. See how the rest of the season shapes up. We've kept out of the bottom four for it up till Christmas, so fingers crossed it stays the same.
Like I've said, I'm not biased towards specific teams. When I've got points on teams like, for example, York, it's not because I hate them. I don't hate them as a club. I will say something though. When we play you, and I'm standing by this, I really, really want to beat you more than anyone else in this division. But I don't hate you as a club, so don't think that. But I do have a soft spot for Wealdstone overall, and I do hope we survive this season. And I do genuinely feel when I look at the sides below you, and without being disrespectful to those clubs, the football on show has been very, very poor with those 5 sides below you. And I think if Wealdstone can stay in the same direction that they've been going, I think Wealdstone will be able to survive this season, because I think those sides below you are very poor. If I'm being, that's just me being brutally honest.
No, that's a fair point, and it's a bonkers league, and teams will drop and rise and have good runs of form, and players will come and go, and we'll still be talking about these sorts of who's going up, going down. Right, I think right until the end of the season, Luke, because we've done that the last couple of seasons. I can't see it changing this time round.
I will say something about this season. I know it's a cliche because everyone, every season, of course, as podcasters, you want to build up the division. And I think we have a right to build up this division because it is a really, really good division overall. And everyone who watches this, and I think everyone who knows about the National League will agree with you on that because it's very unpredictable. But this season specifically, I genuinely feel it's going to be a really, really good season. Probably better than the Notts Wrexham season, because you look at that season, it was between 2 sides who were going to win the league. And that was more or less it. Whereas this season, we've got a relegation battle, we've got a playoff chase, we've got a top 3 chase. There's about 5 sides that could win the league. Of course, people will have opinions how many sides are involved, but these 5 sides, I think you would include, who could potentially win the league. So it has got the potential to be a great season.
Yeah, without a doubt. So, let's hope that the first half's been really great. Let's hope the second half's just as good. Good luck to all the non-league teams, in the FA Trophy and the FA Cup coming up, and hopefully the National League will get back and up and running after this cold spell, and we can start talking about some proper games.
Brilliant. Paul, once again, thanks for joining me, and thanks to everyone that's tuned in tonight, and we will see you next week. Bye for now.